All right, Joel Gausten here from joelgausten.com. I'm going to dive back into New Jersey history for this installment and talk to somebody who is making things happen long before I got into the scene. It's my pleasure to welcome someone I've known for decades, but just recently reconnected with, Mr. Tommy Blewett. Tommy, thanks
Hey,
for coming on, man. I
hi
appreciate it.
Joel. Thanks for having me. That was a nice intro.
Absolutely, man. I really appreciate you coming on. So, yeah, man, you have quite a history in New Jersey punk and oi. You were doing things before I started doing shows and getting involved on that end myself. Um, so we have a lot of ground to cover. We have a lot of mutual friends to incriminate along the way, I'm sure. But to kind of start off way at the beginning, um, when did music and particularly, punk rock and the scene that we cross paths in really kind of take hold of you?
Well, let's see. Well, growing up, as a little kid, I was just like most guys around our age. I was into Kiss. Kiss is the first, music I could remember, hearing, seeing, buying, my dad. I still have my copy of Hotter Than Hell around here somewhere that he bought me, whenever that was. And it's all scratched to hell and destroyed. But Kiss is the first rock band I remember seeing and being like, "What's this?" Even at a young age, probably around my son's age, my dad took me to see them in MSG in '79. It was
Wow.
actually not Destroy, the Return of Kiss, whatever that was, Dynasty.
Dynasty. Yeah,
That
yeah.
tour, yeah, that was I don't remember 100. I know I was there and I could remember certain aspects of it and things. And I remember about an hour into it, I got scared and wanted to go home. But but from there it was, you know, I've listened to a lot of the other guys talk, and it's a similar thing. Whatever kind of my dad was into was what I was into as a kid. And he was always in. It was all the mostly classic rock at the time. He was a big Doors fan. Rolling Stones. I'm trying to think of some more. I could even remember, Genesis, things like that. But for me, it was mostly Kiss. And then once when we moved to New Jersey, we discovered the Uncle Floyd show pretty early. Yeah, we discovered that pretty early, and that's when I was exposed to things like Ramones, Elvis Costello, some of the acts at the time, but mostly the Ramones. The Ramones was kind of my second kind of favorite. Ooh, I like this, but I didn't know it as punk or anything like that. I was a big Ramones fan. I was a big Elton John fan. My dad took me to see Elton John when I was very young too, and then I didn't really go to a concert or anything like that till maybe like when Pink Floyd returned, when the David Gilmour Pink Floyd.
Mhm.
I went to a bunch of those concerts and things. So it was mostly, classic rock, Kiss, AC/DC, anything heavy. I went to the Columbia House Penny, metal phase, where you're just picking out stuff. MTV. I mean, anyone who says MTV didn't, especially early MTV, it was very influential. One of the
Mhm.
ways I discovered Social Distortion was on MTV, which they'll figure in a little bit later, but mostly Kiss, Ramones, and things like that. And my freshman year of high school, I went to Pope John.
Mhm.
Anyone in Jersey has known Pope John, and it wasn't a good match for me. I didn't fit in there, and I'd found three or four other guys who really didn't fit in there either, and they were into things like Sex Pistols, Black Flag. My friend Chris, another guy Jay, another guy Kevin. We all kind of rode the same, even though we lived in different areas. We all kind of rode the same bus, and that's kind of the stuff those guys were listening to. And they were lending me tapes. Never mind the Bollocks. I'm trying to think which Black Flag albums, things like that. And I was like, ooh, this is like what I like, but different, and it just kind of went from there. It was just, and those were kind of the things that I was exposed to. And like I said, I remember one day it was either, I can't remember the year. I'm bad with years. You'll see that as we go. But like I was saying, social distortion, they're a real important band to me, and that's I'm trying to think of the exactly when, but it was probably around the time of the self-titled album. I was getting ready for school in the morning and in my room, and I had MTV on, and the Story of My Life video came on, and I was like, who's this? What is this? This is really, it was speaking to me even at a young age. I was like, wow, this is great. Who are these? And I wrote it down. I wrote down on paper and stuff. I was like, social distortion, then I got home from school that day. I asked my mother. She took me down a record. I think it was maybe Al Wilk down in Ledgewood, maybe down somewhere
Mhm.
down around the Ledgewood Mall. And I went to the guy behind the counter. I'm like, you have this? I'm maybe 15, 16, maybe. And he's like, yeah. And I got the cassette. I still have it around somewhere. And it kind of all just, it just kind of all developed from there. At least my freshman year of high school was when I was kind of introduced that there was different music out there than the Ramones, because everybody was into like metal and hair metal and stuff. When I was in like grade school and things like that, it was either like Iron Maiden, Guns N' Roses, things like that, or, Bon Jovi, Poison, you always hear the joke, people saw Poison, thought it was girls. I thought they were girls when I first saw when I first saw the look with the catch rag that cover. I was like, ooh, girls, and they were guys, and it was, that stuff, that stuff had its time. And to be honest, it's one of the things I've realized, that's music that gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I've realized over the last few years is it it's unwarranted in a lot of ways. Like a lot of that stuff kind of rot. There's a lot of what, there's a lot of punk in that. There's a lot of kind of, yeah, it's just different. It was just presented different. It was presented in its time. But that was something I didn't take as serious, once I was like, ooh, Black Flag, Sex Pistols, this, that, social distort,
Mm.
that stuff is stupid. That stuff, look at these guys. That's not cool like this stuff. I went through that too, because what was I, 16, 15, as you grow older and become more of a fan, you realize kind of that music's, what's the word I'm looking for? If it's good, it's good. It doesn't matter what it looks like, or however it's. I've become somebody who can, I could enjoy. The other day, I was calling from the car wash, and I got the Sirius in the car, and a Slaughter song came out, and I was like, man, this is good. We're
Well,
back, 30, 30 something, years ago. I would have been like, turn that off, man. Put on, Flipper or something like that.
I mean, look at some of the people I've had on my channel. I mean, I
Yeah,
still have a love for that old, hard rock, if you want to call it hair metal stuff.
yeah,
The funny thing is, I know people who I came up with who in their late teens got rid of all those records, but
yeah,
now they're buying them back. And I'm like, guess what? I never sold mine. I don't
yeah.
have to buy them back. They're still here. I never got rid of any of them.
but yeah, so that was kind of the music of my youth, the punk. And then after, this is where I start to get involved with some of the guys and stuff. That I only went to Pulp John for 1 year. It wasn't working out for me there, and it was financially, my parents had to pay for me to go there.
Mm.
I wasn't responding well there. They I didn't mix in there what was there. I was, it was just whatever, it just wasn't for me there, and so I went to Opacom High School for my sophomore year. And first, I knew people. I'd grown up in town, so it wasn't like I didn't know anybody in school. But the first the first new person that I ever met, that I ever was like, oh, hey, how are you? Was Pete, was Jersey Pete. It was like it was the second period, it was the second period, we were in like a home ec class or something. It was somewhere we were cooking and learning the, certain people, I guess they got to teach us to live on our own or something, So like it was like a cooking kind of cleaning class, and it was me and Pete and two other guys, and this wasn't like the Pete you see now. This was long black trench coat, beret, mohawk underneath, eyeliner, safety pins, kind of Pete, but to me, he was just like a dude, and, we were friendly. We were friendly in class, and I had another class with him and Bob. I don't know if you know Bob, Bob Gardner.
Sure,
Bob's
sure.
one of Pete's really good friends, and Bob, was a good friend of mine for many years. And he's still a friend, but I don't see you really talk to him much. But when I do see him, I love seeing him. Or like one of the themes I've noticed in your videos is family. We are all kind of a family in a weird way, but yeah, I was involved with them. I was in the room with Pete and Bob, and we became friendly. And Bob ends up being a founding member of the Squad Car Vandal project later on.
Yeah.
So all those guys were just mostly me and Pete were always very friendly. Me and Bob were I got along well with all those guys. I heard Pete talk about his friend Kent Shooter. Kent was another great guy. Kent was older than us, but he was Kent was like out of the punk rock kind of catalog, like when you saw him, like he looked the part. He had the boots, like the whole kind of image and knowledge of just music and the scene and just kind of how to behave. And I was in something with him, like a study hall or something, and I became friendly with him, and he would lend me records and turn me on to some different things, and just kind of all went from there. And the punk kind of music was mostly what I was drawn to, but I ran with anybody who I thought was kind of cool or a little bit of a misfit was I was always drawn to, and they were always kind of drawn to me. So I would hang out with Pete just as much as I hang out with a guy whose hair was blown out to here down his shoulders. It didn't matter. I was never a uniform type guy. Like if
Right.
you were cool and you were into cool stuff, I wanted to know you, and that's that's kind of how most people were with me too. I tend to be able to go amongst the tribes, but that was kind of where it all kind of started. Was probably my first couple years of high school where it was like, yeah, this I like all kinds of music, but this is my stuff. And at that time also, well, everything that was exploding, so it was kind of like, then there was Nirvana, but prior to that, there was Jane's Addiction, things like that. We really got to grow up kind of, I think, and maybe outside of maybe the 60s, early 70s, I think that late 80s into the mid 90s period of music that's probably the last great ever of music.
It was the right time
Yep.
because everything was changing. And looking back on it, because you and I are very close in age and experiences. So, the first Lollapalooza at Waterloo Village,
Yeah, yeah, I was there.
massive event. I mean, that was a critical show day. for everybody who was there because we were ground floor for, Nine Inch Nails, I think, had sold 10,000 albums at that point. They
Hmm.
weren't anything yet. It was the first time I think a lot of people saw Henry Rollins because the Rollins
Yeah,
opened that tour. Of course, Jane's Addiction, you had
yeah,
Ice-T, and it was in our backyard more or less. And it was the start of what would become the 90s.
yep,
And obviously that's the time that you and I really kind of came up in. And this massive sort of mushroom cloud that happened with alternative music, we felt the reverberations of that even in, the woods
yep,
in northern New Jersey, because suddenly, I was playing in bands before the Green Day thing happened. That happened. Suddenly we got a lot more gigs. Like clubs started booking more punk bands. But even prior to that, a little bit prior to that, you and I crossed paths for the first time because there was a place in Hopatcong called the Clubhouse where
yeah,
bands played. And that was one of the main things I wanted to talk to you about because I started going there, I think in 94 was when I was there for the first time. I think it was the Murdered, Broken Heroes. eh, I can't remember who else was there,
I'm
but
trying to remember that first kind of show, and I think it was Richie had a lot to do with it too. Richie had a lot to do with kind of booking the shows, where I was kind of the guy with the key, he was, but
okay, when you say Richie, who do you mean?
Richie Murder.
Okay.
Rich, yeah, Rich, I don't know, he's another guy. He kind of, he's a provocative cat, like I know he
A little
kind
bit,
of,
a little bit.
we'll use that, but he's pretty cool. But what happened, well, I'm trying to think where to start without rambling again, but my dad was involved in a homeowner association up around the lake, and that building was associated with it. But it was kind of getting old. People would rent it for certain parties, things like that, and stuff. And in high school, my friends John, Mike, and some other guys, they had a band, and they would rehearse in there. They had worked at the beach club and things, and I asked my dad, I said, hey, and these guys practice there. So we would practice, they would practice in there, they'd hang out, they had kind of like a rock band, and they would, rehearse for high school shows, or they played Obsession, we'll get to Obsessions. But they would, everybody played Obsession, it's a lot of the same stories, but that was kind of how it started. Then we had done a couple of kind of shows there with some of our high school kind of bands and things, and then one night we are supposed to have something there, and there was just a whole threat in the town that there was going to be like a lot of trouble there. And this is pre us getting older. This was still around teenage high school year. There was supposed to be some kind of problem there, and they ended up, the police contacted my dad. We're like, hey, you can't have nothing going on there tonight with these kids. There's going to be some trouble up there. And so that got scrapped. And then it was kind of just laid dormant for a couple years until the era you're kind of talking about, where I'm trying to think how I got involved with those guys. But actually, all right, I got it. Yeah, this was CCM, County College Morris years, 92, 93. I went to CCM, and I we would go at night. A lot of people would hang out in the Ledgewood Dunkin' Donuts. Sure,
Yep.
you, yeah, that became a guy I had done some plays with and stuff in college. He One night I was like, oh, what are you doing? He goes, oh, sometimes I go down and hang out at the Dunkin' Donuts in Ledgewood. So I was like, oh, I'll come with you. And when I went in there was Bob, there was Pete, there was all these other kind of, early 90s skate slash skin slash punk slash, hippie hippie stuff was big then too. There was the Grateful Dead was still the Grateful Dead. Fish,
Right.
it was just like a real kind of cultural group of people hanging around there at night. and and I knew a bunch of them. So that was kind of the, oh hey, what are you guys doing? And we just all reconnected. Everybody started hanging out there every night. You started, going to parties, going to concerts, going to hang out at different people's houses, and then, I had seen Pete one night and they had a record. They had the Media Blowout record. And I was like, oh, what's this? He's like, oh, that's my band. That's our new record. And I paid him for it. He gave me one or something. And I took it home and played it. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Stuff, stuff, this is cool. But so it just kind of escalated from there. And then I started to get the idea because it was similar to even the stories you hear from the 70s. It was like I was kind of hanging around people who were making their own music. And I love that. I always love music, rock music, punk music. And I'm like, oh wow, all of these guys have bands. And then we would go see some shows, and one night I went, I'm trying to think. I don't know, I'll describe one show that I think may have been the start of something. I don't know. We went to Connections one night, and it was Those Unknown, Blank 77, and I forget the other band. But either way, all three of them blew me away. I was like, wow, this is something I want to be a part of, and I would ride with Tim to some Blank shows, and went to saw Broken Heroes one night at this Pete might have told this story. It was a show at the gas station. It was a Halloween show that turned into like a big riot. Somebody got stabbed, and I'd never been in anything like that before. I'm standing there because that was a wild place too. Because if you were right around the place, it was all right. But if you wandered in any direction off the street, it was kind of like, oh, all right, let me go back to where that was. But I think Mephistopheles was there. It was a huge kind of afternoon into the night thing, but it culminated in the Broken Heroes playing and somebody getting stabbed and things like that. But I was just like, man, this is stuff I want to be a part of. And then we started talking about doing our own shows. And the one you bring up, I think may have been the first show. I remember Those Unknown being there. I remember Broken Heroes, Murdered played there a bunch. Um, Banner of Hope. I heard you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys were great, and they were nice guys too, especially Matt. I kind of got to know him at the time.
Yeah.
So,
Rest in peace.
it's like, let's put on a show, and they kind of went off from there. Went from that, like one night, my dad he was always cool, whatever it was to rent the place was what he took. He knew people were going to be drinking and stuff. But he's like, look, you guys just got to keep, can't really have it. You got to try to discourage it, but he just didn't want no trouble. But he was always, you know, encouraging, like he enjoyed it too in his own kind of way.
Cool.
So, he was great like that, and we it kind of went from there. We had a couple shows. There was one kind of all day into the night one. That was kind of the Greasy Tony. Yeah, go ahead.
Not to cut you off, but I wonder if I was going through my archives, preparing for this.
Yeah, I was
And
looking.
I came across I think I still have it somewhere, but maybe it was a picture I took of a t-shirt that was at one of the shows, and the front
Okay.
says, I eat people. And on the back is a list of all these bands that played. The show was on May 28th, 1995.
Yeah.
My band at the time, Another Ins, played. But let me read the names, and anybody who's watching this, we're going to take you back to 1995 now. So check out the names of some of these bands. So Broken Heroes, The Suspects, Those Unknown, The Pissed from Connecticut,
Yep.
uh, The Redcoats, The Tonics, Sociopath, rest in peace, Chris Seitzma, The Murdered, The Bristles, rest in peace,
Yeah.
Anthony, the Zoms, Blank 77, Thirsty Cows,
There's,
My Band and Otherins, and Grieving Eucalyptus.
yeah, grieving now, now it's all coming back to me because there's a lot of that, like Woodstock vibe where it's like, if you say you were there, you weren't really there. If you
Right.
remember being there, you weren't, but that brings it all back just now, like the Zoms, Claire's, that was his name, right? Claire, or that is his
That's
name.
what he
I
called
think,
himself. Yeah, Claire
yeah,
Zom.
Claire Zom. Yeah. He was, yeah, the Zoms, Grieving Eucalyptus. I remember. Yeah, I remember a lot of those names now. Yeah, that was a whole day event from what I understand, from what I remember,
Yeah.
but yeah, Richie had a lot, he had a lot to do with, putting on those shows, as far as booking went and stuff like that, and that was a fun band too, man. The Murdered were cool, they were kind of like the Damned meet, Screaming Lord such type, type
Yeah.
Oxbar mix or something. They were cool. I was a fan of what they did too. But yeah, so we had events like that, and then one year I decided to have a New Year's party. I can't remember the year. The first one went well. The first one went kind of too well. And I believe, yeah, I believe we had bands there. I think Renee was DJing, Renee Blanks, and some others, and everybody was kind of like, "Oh yeah, it's kind of fun." So the next year is like, "Let's do it again," and it turned into something else. We started getting people from out of towns and different groups, different skins, different this. And then keep in mind, I got a lot of other people, other friends from, there had to be 300 people there that night of and then and it was going okay, but there was something in the air, it didn't have the vibe that it had, previously. And I'm trying to think, I don't know how it started, but all of a sudden, I was like, it looked like one of those Clint Eastwood movies from, the 80s where, all of a sudden there was just a rumble going on, like chairs flying and people just going in and coming out. And
Yeah.
I don't even know how to describe it, but it was wild for a while. Finally, I kind of like the trade Eddie Murphy traded places, it was like, get the fuck out. That's it. Like, oh no, Tommy, I'm sorry, you remember TC. TC was up there. He was, he was involved. He wasn't involved in fighting, but some of his gang were not his gang, but some of his guests, they were throwing down. Everybody was throwing down. It was just, I think it was just, like I said, it was one of those Cannonball Run type fights where it was just like, give me somebody to hit. Then finally I had to do the old, out. Just, it was a stone groove, man. Just get the fuck out of here, And then finally we got it down to about 10 people, and then police start coming back, going, not gonna do it. Was this guy here? I'm like, yeah. well, he's got to stay here the rest of the day. He can't drive. All right, yeah. So I ended up with a bunch of people on the floor, and yeah, we didn't do that much anymore.
Yeah. I was there. I remember that
Yeah,
night, man. I think I was 16 or 17 at the time.
yeah,
Now I would know to avoid a situation like that. But back then at 16, it's like,
yeah. It was no, it was it was what it was. I mean, people got hurt, but nobody got hurt. I didn't get hurt. Just threw everybody out. Then I was like, oh, we can't really do this no more.
was that
And
the last
then
show? Was that the last show?
I think it was. I don't think we really did much else after that anymore. That was kind of the beginning of the end, I think, up there. There may have been something else, but I think after I had, that had been after a few years, so I was kind of running the stuff pretty much myself at that point. My dad helped a little bit in the early years, but it was pretty much like, just give me the money for what, I would just pay the group the money for what you're doing up there. And after that, yeah, that got a little too, because people had to go to hospital, things like that, like there was teeth on the floor, broken
Puke.
furniture.
I
Yeah,
remember
so
a lot of
puke, yeah,
puke.
yeah,
Yeah.
somebody smashed my pinball machine. It was like, yeah, this is getting this is too much now. It got too big. Sometimes when things get too big, it kind of, but we had fun, and it was a place it was a place to play, and then guys like you would see what we were doing up there, and then kind of, people start, I'm not going to say that was like the birth of hall shows, but I think it was one of the early kind of, at
Yeah.
least our area, kind of like inspirations for a lot of the VFW type shows and things that came along,
That
like,
definitely up there. I had some friends who were doing things like down in Patterson, stuff like
hmm,
that. But as far as our area,
yeah,
you were ahead of it. You were way ahead of it. And
yeah,
everything I did at the Franklin Legion Hall was kind of just taking the inspiration from that. Because if my chronology is right, no, you were still doing shows at the time.
yeah, we may have been.
And I know you actually played the Franklin Legion Hall.
Yeah, yeah, that was a good one.
We had some funny show. I for some reason, I don't know what I was thinking, when you're old enough to know better, not to book the Murdered and War Zone on the same bill
Yeah.
because it might be a bit of a culture shock.
Yeah,
So we had basically Ray with his long mic cord
yeah, I
walking
remember
into
that.
the audience and singing to a bunch of people who looked like they were extras from The Crow.
Yeah, he was great that day. I remember that. Was that the one we put with? Were we on that? I don't know. I can't remember.
It's possible.
I know I was there. I don't know if we played on that one. I think we played with blanks when the blank.
Yes.
Yeah, we were on the blanks one, and then we were supposed to be on another one, and we didn't come. But we'll talk about that later because that gets into the that was when our fill-in drummer's godmother died, and he called me up morning. I'm like, oh, why can't you play? It's only gonna be like an hour. Is this the funeral today or something? It was just one of those my dog ate my homework kind of.
Mm.
But that's where you get into that was kind of we were like a oi punk kind of Spinal Tap experience.
Well, let's get more into Squad Car Vandals because obviously, we played shows together. It was
Yeah,
a fun band. I always dug you guys. So, how did that whole thing come together?
that kind of morphed from that was I'm trying to think exactly. Like we never played any of those clubhouse shows. We played a quick set the the uh the night of the riot. That's the only time we ever played a show there, and that was when we lost Bob. But let's see, let's go to when it basically started kind of hanging around Dunkin' Donuts. I was talking to Bob one night, and he's like, "Oh, Steve Picaro?" And I'm gonna say, "Yeah, yeah, I know Steve. This is my buddy Steve. He worked in the liquor store in town because he's looking to start some kind of oi band or something like that." He asked me, so I was like, "Oh, that sounds cool." So I'll talk to him about it. And then I was like, one day I was down there, and I'm in the liquor store one day and I saw Stevie and I was like, "Hey, Bob told me you're gonna start some kind of band or something." He's like, "Yeah, I got some songs, some ideas." Bob played drums, Steve played guitar. He was kind of like one of those soccer punk type kids. I don't know. I don't know if that was just an exclusive thing to Hope Kong or what have you, but they looked like skaters, but they didn't skate, but they were into soccer. And they were into punk rock, mostly California type stuff, Dead Milkmen, well, Dead Milkmen in California, but Dead Kennedy, they had a certain kind of, they had a certain kind of tribe too. That was kind of Stevie's thing. And, you know, we were always pretty good friends too. And so I was like, yeah, well, that sounds cool. I mean, maybe I'd sing, you know, or something, you know, because I used to sing in like a like kind of like a fake kind of cover band, which was kind of punky too. You know, yeah, we played a few gigs. You know, we played for Bill a couple times at Obsessions. We played in the park, won a battle of the bands. You know, that was a whole other kind of thing. So I was like, yeah, this sounds like something fun. You know, so I went back to Bob and I said, hey, you guys want to come up to Clubhouse one day? Maybe we could try to do something, you know? So it was me, Bob, Stevie, and my buddy Mike. You know, he's an all around guitarist, you know, musician. Because me and him had tried to start a punk band like a year or two earlier. You know, we were trying to put a little something together with a couple guys, and it just wasn't really working. You know, so he came up. You know, he was messing around on guitar and bass a little too, and that was kind of the original kind of bunch of us. And Stevie had a few songs, and we do like a little, you know, Blitzkrieg Bop, things like that, the typical kind of covers. And you know, Mike was in and out, but you know, Bob and Stevie were very creative, you know, like together, like musically, you know, like they were, you know, they came up like the core of our songs, they came up with pretty quick, you know, music. And it was, you know, lyric wise, you know, Steve had some stuff, I would have some stuff. And you know, we were just kind of messing around. And our friend, well, you know, Marianne, she loves music, and you know, it's her whole life, you know, music and bands, and you know, and promoting bands and promoting things. That was just who she was. She was always hanging around, and she had a little bit of experience on the bass, but you know, not much. But Mike, you know, Mike was in and out. He had a lot going on at the time. You know, he was working different shit. You know, he just, it seemed like most of the time hanging out it was me, Bob, Marianne, and Stevie. So she would pick up the bass and mess around. And we kind of just kicked Mike out for the time being. He comes back. Everybody comes back, Joe. You know, it's like
Right.
it's like
Yep.
the broken here. Yeah, we kind of just moved on without it. But he was still hanging around, and he would, you know, if he came around, he would show Marianne some stuff on the bass and things like that. So that kind of became, you know, you know, the band. And we didn't have a name yet. And the original idea of the name was Altered Vision, which I don't know. There was something kind of hardcore. There was
That's a
something.
very Obsessions name.
Yeah, it was. There was something about it that wasn't. I don't know. It just wasn't us. It just wasn't what we were doing. But we were
Hold
leaning.
on. All right, Obsessions. Let's give it up for Altered Vision.
Yeah, it could have
Yeah.
went either way. You know, it had like either a hardcore or like a, you know, like a, I don't know, a Guido cover, but it could have been, you know, it just wasn't. Yeah, it just wasn't right, you know, but we couldn't think of nothing else. And one night we were writing certain stuff down and making all these stupid names. And, you know, there was I forget exactly what paper. I had a newspaper, and it was something about a cop car getting broken into or some shit like that. And it was like, oh, the word vandal. I remember where vandals was in, and then it was, and it just, we were just writing down different stuff. And it was like, I think I wrote it down. I wrote down Squad Car Vandals, and we were all kind of like, yeah, that sounds like something, you know. And it was something we could put like an image to or something, you know. We started thinking of, oh yeah, we could have a record, and it could be a cop car or on fire, you know, things like that. So it just kind of stuck. And then we had about a half hour of music and stuff that was pretty good. And then we booked the show. We booked the show at Obsessions, and and that was that was it. It was me, Stevie, Marianne, and Bob, and we went up there, and we played. I thought we played really good. And you know, Bill thought we played really well. I don't know how good he thought we played, but we drew enough people to where, you know, like 30 seconds after I got off the stage, he's like, he had somebody coming in, like I think it was Kicks. It was something like, I'm pretty sure it was. He's like, oh man, we got Kicks here next Saturday. Why don't you open for them? I go, why don't they open for us? I go, I go, we got a lot of people here. He's like, oh, you're gonna be a wise guy now? I said, nah, man. I was here when you had Black Eyed Susan here, and there was, There was only 6 of us watching them, and we were calling out the one song that we wanted to hear. They told us no. So I said, "Why don't Kicks open for us, man?" Like joking with. I'm like, nah, we're good for now. And we kind of went about. We played. I'm trying to think of some of the places we played with that lineup there. We played. I don't know when your show was, but I'm trying to think who was in the band when we played your show. I think it
I
was still
think,
us. I
you
think it
know
was
what's
still
funny?
me. But yeah, it was still me, still Bob, Marion, and Steve. We're
I,
still.
a lot of that time is a blur for me, but I actually
Yeah.
the exact date of that show. It was January 20th, 1996.
Yep.
It was the first Squiggy show because I was playing the Squiggy. That was our first show. You guys, the Blanks. There may have been a band called Watson Poe that played like
Yeah,
almost
yeah, that's on the floor. I got it. I got that upstairs. Big Wig, was that a band? I feel
Bigwig,
like
right?
yeah, I
And they
think
ended up having like this
they
whole
ended up having like a career kind of.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And
yeah.
yeah, Blanks and Violent Society.
Yep, yeah, Violent Society a while. I saw them last summer in Boston. I went up to Blanks. I think it was at the Middle East. We spent the weekend in Boston. I hadn't done
Right.
like that with those guys in years, and we went and stayed up there, and it ended up being a pretty big show. And Violent Society was on there. I think it was the Unseen were the
Yeah.
headliners, and they were great too. And Blanks
Oh
are
yeah.
always, when the Blanks 77, even now when they want to bring it, there's when they're sloppy, they're sloppy. But when they when they bring it, they're still one of the best. They still get people wild. Like
Yeah.
they. But anyway, back to the SCV years. Yeah, we played up there. We played a place called the Silver Lining. I don't know if you remember that.
Was
There was
that in Mount Arlington?
no, it was like
No.
down in that Cliftony area or something. It ended up closing. That was another night. It was snowing. I think it was all around the same winter. We we played down there with I forget the other bands, but we ended up playing last, and the girl promoted the show. Her name was like Mary Line or something like that. That's what she called herself, Mary Line. Mary. She had called me, and she was like, "Oh, we're doing a punk rock show," and we were up there doing our thing, forgetting, me and Bob were arguing, you know, people were making fun of people and everything, it was just, it was the typical. From what I understood, we were the last band to ever play there. I think it closed. I think we shut it down. But yeah, that winter we ended up playing a lot of shows, and then I'm trying to think when then Bob kind of he just took off for a while. Was getting whatever. That's when we had your show. We had another show with you coming up, and that was right after kind of Bob was left us, and so we got involved with this other guy because we had met this band in Rockaway. The old, well, you probably rehearsed there, the old flea market. I forget what it was called. What was
Yep.
it? It was called
Uh,
something sound. I don't know. It was a rehearsal
I
studio.
know
So
exactly because when I had Tim on, we went off about that because I
yeah, yeah. I can't remember the name of it right now, but we would rehearse there sometimes, like before, like we would have, like if we knew we were playing somewhere, we would go there instead of Clubhouse, so we could kind of be on a stage and things like that. And we were doing our set and doing our GG Allen covers and stuff. And when we came out, there was this guy. There were a bunch of these guys. They all had long hair and stuff. And they were like, "Oh man, you guys are guys playing that punk rock stuff, right?" We're like, "Yeah." So, well, we're into that too. And I was like, "You are?" They're like, "Yeah, They were called No Future, and they were cool. Like you could tell they were like kind of like hair rockers, probably. I don't know what their band was before that, but these guys were all solid musicians and stuff. And sometimes I'll try to digitize it, but they had a CD, like a demo. They ended up putting out a CD not too long, but they were doing some Rancid covers, and they were like us. They had about like 6, 7 of their own songs, and few covers and stuff, but these guys were tight, you know, these guys were pretty rock and roll, you know. So we were, you know, we would play some stuff with them. We ended up playing some bar gigs, and they played Obsessions with us one night too. I think we played Obsessions one more time for something for Bill, and we brought them with us, and then we played at Boulevard Pub one night or something. But anyway, long story short, their drummer JJ, who turns out he's my my brother-in-law's ex-brother-in-law. I didn't know that until, you know, like a couple of years ago. But he was, you know, we ended up asking him. We're like, hey, look, man, we got some shows coming, and Bob's being Bob somewhere. So hey, you want to play with us? We're gonna play like and we knew you were getting ready to do a Misfit show at the time. So we told him, we were like, hey man, you know, we might be able to play a big show in Action Park if we do good at this show. You know, so he was like, oh yeah, I'll play, you know. We rehearsed with him once or twice, and then the night before we were out in the city. I read this story, I remember real good because we saw you at Coney Island High, me and Marianne, and we were there partying and stuff. We're like, yeah, we can't wait. You know, we're ready for the gig to it. And then the next morning, he's calling me up, and I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, my godmother. I'm like, dude, we got a big show today. You know, my godmother died. And then, you know, I heard you were mad, and we have so many of these stories of
Was
just,
it okay? Was it a Legion Hall show I was
yeah,
doing?
yeah. It was supposed to be at the Legion Hall, and we didn't come. And I don't know if Mary Ann was supposed to tell you.
I'm trying to remember. I mean, this is almost 30 years ago. I'm trying to
Yeah, I
remember.
remember. See, some stuff I can't put together, but that I
That may,
remember
that may
real
have
well.
been when we had Flag of Democracy play
Yeah, it was
and
something.
Headwound.
Yeah, it was something. It was going to be really good. And he all of a sudden he was like, "Yeah, I can't play the show." This, and we're like, so I told Mary, yeah, I called her because I'm like, "Hey, he can't play," and then I'm like, "Can you tell Joel?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'll tell him." I don't know if she did. She probably just went back to sleep or something,
I
but we
don't
didn't.
know. I
Yeah,
don't.
I just remember like, yeah, you were mad, and I don't blame you. And then it was like,
I apologize if I was mad.
no, it was great, dude. This is all the stuff. These are all the stories we love telling when we hang
Yeah.
out or when we talk, because
Well, I
we
mean, look,
had incidents like this everywhere we went. Like
I I would never be a promoter today because bands are a pain in the fucking ass.
yeah,
And I dealt with so many pains in the ass. Not that
and
you guys were in particular, but
no, we were
there were
just
a few bands that I just wanted to take out and fucking strangle because they were like unbelievable to deal with, you know?
yeah, yeah, like I said, we got all kinds of stories like that because that was kind of then we kind of it started to after that we kind of went away because it was like, all right, we didn't show up at this. Then you had this was like right before you had your big Misfit show, which was awesome. You know, we all went and stuff, and I remember we wanted to play that really bad, and then we didn't show up at your hall show, and Marianne's like, yeah, he won't ask us now. I'm like, yeah, nobody will. So so then we kind of I'm trying to think how we got into the second phase, which became kind of the more functioning squad car vandals, like the more I don't want to say professional, but it kind of died on the vine there a little bit, and then Mary, it was still me, Bob, and it was still not Bob, it was still me, Stevie, and Marianne kind of hanging around, and Marianne kind of I don't know, I don't remember exactly but she was around, but she kind of it just kind of faded out for a little while, and then we wanted to do it again, and then Mike, our original guitar bass player, he started hanging around again, and then Quincy was always around, and then me and Quincy were always pretty, we were pretty friendly at the time. We were still friends, but I didn't know him that well, but I remember asking him like, hey, you want to come up and do this and that, and so we did a couple rehearsals like that, like me, him, Stevie, and Mike. And then we wanted two guitars. So Mike went over to guitar, and then we got involved. Stevie's brother had a band called I think they were called Twist Off Lackeys or something like that. They played a while. They played a bunch of shows. They were good. They were fun. We started playing around with them. And then their bass player, John, the bass player, he became kind of the new Bob. You know, he was kind of the new wild card in the gang. You know, you know. I was kind of the wild card on stage, but everywhere else, Bob was the wild one. You know, and then all of a sudden, John, the bass player, he was a whole different kind of trip. You know, like we played. This is when we started playing like CB Showcase, like Sunday Showcase. We because musically, I'm not gonna say it was tighter now. There was, musically it lost the kind of kids in the garage type vibe that we started with. It lost a lot of the heart kind of when we lost Bob and Marianne, but when me and Steve wanted to do it again, it it was more of a band. It was more of a band. It was more of a show. We could play almost an hour. We had about 10 originals, 10 covers, and we would dig up covers that, nobody knew. So people thought they were our song, things, we would play that. So it became more tight, more solid. And I remember the first night, I remember we played CBGBs. We played with Twist Off Lackeys, and we had John, the bass player, and I'm like, dude, I had some Halloween mask with me. I'm like, yo, man, they just saw you in the other band. You can't, they're watching tonight. They might bring us. They weren't going to bring us back there. They told us fuck off when we were done. But I made him put a Halloween mask on, and he was drunk, man. And we go up there and play, and it was a Sunday night, and there was like nobody there. I mean, there were. It was very, there were like some Japanese tourists and whoever came to see the band. Yeah, there was maybe, if there were 30 people there by the time we played, it was a lot. And we're up there doing our thing, and all of a sudden somebody throws a chair, like just somebody throws a chair. I think they were trying to hit me, but but they hit a girl. Might have been Hilly for all I know. But they were trying to hit, I don't know, they hit a girl in a chair. Then there was some other kind of fight in the corner. And I'm like, I always wore sunglasses and things because I was very self-conscious, like it took me a while on stage to, kind of, so I was always kind of high, to me it was, I became, I don't want to say a character, but it brought out a side of me that, I wasn't, I don't know, I'm trying to describe, it just, I turned it up a little bit, but yeah, so we played there, we played Acme Underground, we played at the Court Tavern, we were getting some shows, we were playing parties, and then we would hang around in Hopatcong, we'd hang around a bar called Boulevard Pub, and they were always looking for bands. So it was kind of like, this is where it comes to, bringing some friends along and stuff, So it was always kind of like, well, we got a band, we could play like more than an hour. We do like punk rock stuff, but there's covers in there and stuff. So we played there one night and it went pretty good. And then, they want, they always, if you get people there, if you get people someplace and they're drinking and spending money and stuff, a place will have you come back, So we started, doing some shows there, and then that was good, but it wasn't, in the sense that it kind of ended up becoming the only place we kind of really played, like we just kind of settled into the fact that, once a month or once every other month, we'd play there. And I remember Tim had started a new band, Jose and the Pussycats or something. One night we had them, we brought No Future with us. We brought them back. There used to be a rock, it was a band called Rat Crew or something like that. They did Rat and Motley Crue covers. And we saw them one night at some other bar. And we're like, hey, you guys, they were cool. And then one guy in the band was cool. And I was like, you come play with us. So we would do these weird bills, where it would be like our stuff, like our show on top of like a Rat tribute, on top of, Jose and the Pussycats. So we were still kind of putting on our own shows, but just, for, a bigger audience and stuff. But the kind of, like I said, the kids in the garage type aspect of it kind of died. And, it just became more just for fun and a show. But, and then we recorded, which, I'll tell you about later if you want to hear. But we never did anything with it, but we got I think at least three guys got the tapes. I know Quincy's got the recordings, Stevie's got them, and my buddy John, who did he played with us on some stuff, and he would show up and he recorded, and he actually just he found some old 8-track or something online that he bought because he wants to remaster it. So one of the last times at his house, he was playing it for me, and I'm like, this is good, like this isn't like bad, like it just we just couldn't sustain it. It was one of those things where we were running around acting like rock stars, when we were nobodies, but we were having fun, and that was, you know,
So, did anything ever come out while you were a band?
no, we had one song on one compilation tape that I sent to California or something like that, which was cool though in a way, because and then I started getting like letters and stuff from, like I have some Maximum Rock and Roll ad one time. I was like, oh, looking for punk bands for comp tape. We never did anything with it, but we should have, and who knows, maybe we still might. It's there and it sounds good, and it's not, it's you know it's good. It's not the worst thing. There's nothing about it that's, I don't know, it aged well, I'll put it to you that way. So maybe someday if we can get it mastered right, maybe we could find somebody who wants to do something with it. Yeah, I don't know if there's any, just do something digital or something. I don't know how much of a demand there is for the return of the squad car vandals, but here and there, whenever some of us are around, we talk about it. But
Yeah.
it's a hard, it's, once again, is there any demand for it? No, but there's also a lot of opportunity now that maybe, more people are, one of the things I'm noticing, more people are doing shows now. People are doing shows more now than they had been probably the last almost 20 years. I'm just starting to see, Chad's doing his stuff up at the Sherman Theater. I know Johnny puts on a lot of shows, with his bands, Fear Gods and things like that. The Salties, there's just seems like there's a lot of people looking for bands,
Yeah.
and bands kind of look like we do, and they're like our age, and they sound like the music we used to make. So it would just be kind of like do you guys want to do this? And what would it be? We couldn't be up there, starting snowball fights and, shit like that. It would have to have a purpose, like so I mean I would do it, I would if at least, three or four of the main pieces, kind of wanted to, I would do something, I would just do it even once, it would be fun, but it would just have to be like, all right, yeah, what's it going to be? How's it, it would have to be, we'd have to work on the old songs, try to come up with some new ones. But, if we could ever get that tape, get those tapes mixed right and get it to somebody who's interested in it, I'd be willing to play, mess around. But we all lead such different lives now, that it's, to get like the five of us or whatever there were. Yeah. Yeah. You get the five, kind of core of that, main band that did the most stuff, to get us, all together, to
Yeah.
put it together would probably be hard. But if somebody asked, I'm sure, they'd
Did you
want.
do other bands besides Squad Car Vandals?
Uh, not, no, that was kind of it. I I had done stuff like around high school, like that was my main, yeah, like we had, I would flunky along when my friends were playing. And then, a lot of times, like, we were younger guys, I had no problem going on stage, going in front of a lot of people and, showing my ass a little bit, what I'm saying? Like I had no problem, I was a showman, I was more, an MC, master of ceremonies type than anything. I didn't have to sing all the songs, but I could, I could kind of, I was always good kind of, in front of a crowd and things like that. And that was something that, a lot of guys, weren't always comfortable with, but nah, after that, I just kind of, as that started to just disintegrate, just that whole lifestyle kind of was like, it's getting, sometimes the party's over, it's like, you know, like everybody starts going their separate ways and you're just kind of like, where is everybody? Where did it all go? And then kind of look for something else. And I was, in high school and things like that. I was very into, I was in the theater. I like to act and be in plays and take acting classes and things like that, directing classes. So, after kind of music kind of, that whole scene kind of died out, or at least for me, I was looking for something to do that was still creative, but a little less chaotic, a little more healthy, a little less, so I went to audition for a play in Dover, the Dover Little Theater. And I was like, oh, let me see if I could, I saw some auditions. I was like, oh, let me see if I could still do this. And I got in it and I got a big part in the play, and then I kind of just, that became kind of my thing, for, you know, right up until, my daughter was born. Then I kind of didn't, I kind of didn't do anything, but I've always, I go to shows, so I'm about to direct a play this winter at the Barn Theater in Montville, which is a pretty big,
Hmm.
yeah, it's a pretty big it's a pretty big nonprofit theater, it's about a 250 seat place. So, that became, once the music kind of died out. And plus, as that it gets unhealthy, that scene. I just wasn't living, I just wasn't living right, once again, at one point you're sitting around, you're drinking, you're partying, you're doing whatever, and you got a whole crowd around you. Then, one day kind of just sitting there like, well, nobody's here, nobody's doing this stuff, nobody's hanging out, or nobody wants to hang out with me. Maybe it's time to, move on from this a bit, but so yeah, so mostly from like Squad Car Vandals probably packed it in early 2000s. We played a big party in the lake one night, and that got really wild. That was a scary scene after a while. I almost drowned. Something else went on. There was a guy in the house like waving a gun around. There were just, yeah, it was one of those type of things. After our set, I ran and jumped in the lake with my clothes on, and this was out in the middle of the main lake of Lake Opakon. And I went down and I was like, I had to kick my shoes off and take my pants off and everything to resubmerge. And
Hmm.
it was just, I think that was the last time we played. That was maybe 2000, 2001. And then that was kind of, yeah, no more of this. And then they had sold the Clubhouse building. They were getting ready to sell it. It just wasn't, it was kind of falling apart, and it wasn't getting rented or anything like that, so the organization kind of, and that was our hangout too. I mean, that was kind of our clubhouse, even if there was nothing going on in there, as far as a show or a party or anything, people were still hanging out in there, people would still be, if you drove by there, somebody was in there. Either I was in there hanging out with some people, my sister was in there, she came along a couple of years after me. She got into the scene, so she was, when I kind of went different ways, she, kind of was the key master up there for a couple of years, but after a while, it just, the place was falling apart. Nothing was really going on there. And then they ended up selling it, like Pete said. And it's like a house now. I think it's like a group home type
Hmm.
scene, which at least that's how it started, which is good. It's going to good use. I'm not much of a I'm trying to think of how to describe. I'm not like I don't drive by there and go, "Ooh," I don't have a lot of that in me where I'm just like so nostalgic for stuff, where I'm just like, oh, I wish I could go back. And I'm like, nah, that was then, this is now, on to the next kind of thing. But those times, those days, they were real, they were real fun. When it was fun, it was fun, when it was ugly, it was ugly. And even in between, just the things you guys did up there, I used to go hang out in the record store up there. What was Doug's store called?
CDs are us in Newton.
Yeah, CDs are us. I used to love to go up there and get records, CDs, talk to him about music. Then, there'd be other people hanging out in there, when we had a fun scene, it was, because that's how you met people and things, by going out and doing things,
Yeah.
as opposed to now, like if I didn't ask that dude, hey, what are you doing tonight? Oh, going to Dunkin' Donuts. I might have never gone in there, I might have never reconnected, with Pete and stuff like that. So, when I look back, it's like I love it, and I still go out. I still try to go to shows. I try to be, supportive as I can. It's hard to go to everything, but back then we used to go like all the places you guys talked about. The only place that I wasn't that, I'm jealous of all the pipeline stories because I'd only been if I could probably count the times I've been to pipeline on one hand, because I worked nights, you know, throughout almost all of the 90s. I worked midnights. So like, Thursday nights were like my Friday at work, so I had to, I missed a lot of that. But when you get into, Coney Island High that was probably my favorite place. Coney Island, wetlands,
Yeah.
trying to think of some other, Coney Island High. I went to, we were there almost at one point, we were there almost every weekend, or somewhere in Hoboken, or
Yeah.
Coney, but Coney Island High was probably my favorite place to kind of hang out. CBGB's okay, but I don't know. I never, we would go there, but it just, I don't know, it was always uncomfortable in there. Like if it was crowded. If it wasn't crowded, it was great. If it was crowded, it was like, yeah, I'm gonna go outside. Yeah, then you went outside and it stunk. Like I mean, I could go, I could ramble on and on, so
It's not what it's like today. Have you been back to that neighborhood? Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. We go. Yeah, I haven't. Yeah, I've been in the John Varvatos place, once or twice. I mean, at least it's something, rock and roll-ish or whatever. But nah, it's different down there. I mean, nothing really. I mean, I barely see any kind of shows going on in New. I mean, I know Bowery Electric. What's the other place? Poison Lounge or something like that.
I'm gonna mispronounce it because I always do, but
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
been
See,
there.
you know what I'm talking. But yeah,
Is
Bowery
it
Electric
Rouge? Yeah.
has good shows, and but it seems like even concert wise, you don't see a lot of. I mean, you probably remember going. I remember first time I ever saw Social Distortion was at the Academy
Mm.
in in Times Square. It was trying to think of the lineup. I want to say it was Best Kissers in the World or something like that was the name of the band.
Yeah.
Peg Boy, which to me is a band that I don't know. They in the category of maybe one night we could do a bands who should have been huge
Oh,
category. Like those guys. The night I saw them, those guys blew me away. I was like, wow, this is. And saw Social Distortion at the Academy. Roseland always had great shows. they had the bigger, New York was always where to go, Continental
Yep.
would have, Continental was pretty cool. Continental kind of reminded me of Connections, kind of.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Continental had a Connections vibe.
Yes.
I liked Continental. I loved Connections. I used to like to go to a lot of shows there. I wasn't too crazy about the Loop Lounge. I didn't like the guys who worked the door.
Yeah. I played a couple of times at the Loop Lounge. I preferred Connections.
Yeah, yeah. Connections was cool, and Joanne died, right? Yeah, Joanne was cool, and Dean. I don't know what Dean does anymore, but the guy Dean who he
Yeah,
booked,
yeah. From
yeah,
Backseat Driver.
yeah, yeah. They called him Dean Bagels or something like that, or something. But Dean was cool, man. They put on good shows there, and he brought in good stuff. I saw Hank Williams III in there. When he first kind of became a thing, and one night they had David Allen Coe, and that was interesting. that was an interesting crowd. But it was that was a cool. Connections was cool. Yeah, the Loop Lounge I wasn't crazy about. I'm trying to think. Pipeline I would have liked to done more of, but it wasn't in the cards. But the Court Tavern, it was. Speaking of people who work the door, ugh.
See, I like the
I
court.
hated that guy when he died a couple years ago, and they were like, there was some big obituary on him that he was some kind of this and performance artist, and I was like, me and Dean would text it back and forth. I'm like, that guy was an asshole. I hated that guy. I'll tell you why. I'll tell this story. It's always a good one. Quincy was involved in this. One night we go down there, right? And he was always a dick. But one night we go down there and I'm like, I'm getting ready to pay him. And I drop my wallet, something, I drop shit. So I go down and pick up my stuff and I had like my money like in my hand. I just put it like this in my lip for a second, pick my shit up. And put everything together. And he goes, and I go to hand him money and he's like, you don't expect me to take that, do you? I go, what? Was there money? I said, well, what about it? It's green, ain't it? He goes, he goes, no, it was in your mouth. I said, no, it wasn't. I said, it's just, and he was like a real jerk off about it. He wouldn't take it, right? So I was like, I'm already down there. So like, here, I gave him some motherfucker, whatever. I was real pissed off. So, and I don't get like this, I try not to fight people, but I was just like, I was stewing on that for like ever, right? So we go down, me and Quincy are going down for something else. I forget what it was, but I think the Kowalskis were there.
Mm.
So so we're going down there. I'm trying to remember who the main band we went to see was, but I remember Lindsay, I remember the Kowalskis being there. So Quincy comes to pick me up, right? Or whatever. He was driving. I got like whatever the hell it was, $20. I get a $20 bill. I put that right in the crack of my ass the whole ride down there. I got it right there the whole time. I'm sitting there and I got it right in the cheeks. I'm like, get that motherfucker. So we get there, we get right up to him, and I'm like, here. I hand him like the most ass sweated friggin' shit, whatever, farted on $20 bill I ever could. I was like, that's what you get. That guy wasn't for me, man. I know people defend him, but I just didn't like, it's like don't treat people, like just be cool. Like I didn't like the way he treated anybody when we would go down there. And so like I didn't get it. I know some people made excuses for it, but I was always like, because I've met so many cool people working the door over the years, especially at places like Coney Island, Coney Island High. Those guys were always cool, man. They looked out for you, One night I almost got myself into trouble there, and one of the guys at the door came over. He's like, you and you two got to go. You guys, you guys might have a problem. They're like, so just head out, and we ain't gonna let anybody else go out. For a little while. Just get up the street, get in a cab, get out of here. And we did. They didn't have to do that. They could have. They could have let me. They could have let us get in trouble. And most of the time they always look. Everybody always looked out for you. Except maybe tonight. Oh, that's a good one. I'll tell that before we go. But anyway, yeah, that Court Tavern guy, he rest in peace or whatever. But I didn't like him.
I don't
He
remember
was,
the guy because I played there a few times, but I
yeah.
was just playing, so I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah. When you were,
feel.
yeah, we played there once. I have to deal with them, but even if you played there, I remember him giving guys a hard time. You know, it's like, oh, I'm in the bed. No, you're not. It's like, well, all right, I'm not. I'm just gonna go home then. You know,
Speaking of guys at the door, you know who was great, who I always really liked was Brendan from SFA. He used to do the door at CBGB's.
okay.
He real big guy.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I always thought he was a sweetheart, like super nice guy, but very New York. Like one of the times the Undead played, we headlined, and it was a late night, and we're loading out, we're bullshitting, we're settling up. You know how that goes, you know. And Brandon just walks over, very matter of fact. He's like, "It's late. We want to go to sleep. Get the fuck out."
I
Like, all
know.
right, sorry, you know. But that's classic New York. Like, you're done. Get the fuck out of our club. You know,
Well,
no.
I could remember Ray B's. He used to work at the Roseland. He used to work a lot of security for a lot of shows because I have like a second cousin or whatever. You know, he worked there for years too, and every once in a while he could get us in a show or something. And I always remember Ray. You know, Ray was always, you know, he was always cool. You know, like you could watch. You know, you could always, you know, you didn't see those guys, and you know the ones who were there, like to kind of look out for guys, you know, the ones who were there to rough people up, you know. And he was, I remember why I didn't know him as Ray B's until like I'd already seen him work at security at concerts for a couple of years, you know. Then all of a sudden I was like, oh, that's the same guy. That's the guy who, you know, that's the guy who works at Roseland. I didn't, you know, when I was younger, I didn't know Warzone until, you know, but I remember going to concerts at Roseland and stuff. And he, you know, he was an interesting looking guy. So
Yeah.
he kind of stood out, you know, and you could always see him looking out for people and things like that. And that was, you could tell that's kind of who he was, you know. He was, you know, the stories you hear about him, I didn't know him at all. I'd spoken to him briefly, you know, here or there over the years, like at your show. And, but you know, when you hear a lot, watch a lot of documentaries, you know, Drew Stone stuff. I mean, everybody was wild when we were younger, but you know, when you hear him talk about, you know, like, you know, I could tell that from him just by watching the way he dealt with people and dealt with kids and handled, you know, security. You know, I'd seen him at the Roseland and some other venues, and I think that's the one thing I remember talking to him about at maybe your show, was telling him similar story to what I'm telling you now. Like, I didn't know you were like a rock singer. I thought you just, you know, you were the guy who worked at Roseland, you know. But yeah, I mean, so many, you know, we could, you know, you could just go on and on. You know, there's so many shows and clubs and people. You know, like you said, you know, we lose, you know, like we lost Anthony last year. It sucked. You know, Anthony was Anthony, you know, and all the stuff the guys say about him, you know, like he was, you know, I don't even know, he was always cool, you know. Me and him, we used to have some fun, you know, because he lived kind of in my general area, you know, so he liked to hang out in a couple of bars in Dover. And, you know, he had a house, and you know, that place was, you know, at least his Jefferson house or whatever. That was, you know, we had fun there. And I'm trying to think who else, you know, a couple other guys, or, you know, some I knew better than others. But Anthony was a tough one, you know, like you know, one of the things, like, well, you know, one of the things been trying to do the last year or two is live healthier, you know, because that that stuff catches up to you, you know. Heavy drinking, heavy, you know, at some point you gotta just, and I'm just saying in general, like, I want to live longer, you know, like I'm older, I got younger kids, you know, and you know, at some point I just kind of was like, you know, how much more of this food do I need? You know, how much, you know, how much more beer do I have to drink? You know, like things like that. I just kind of, everything in moderation now, you know, like lost
Well, I
100
mean,
pounds recently, you know. It's like,
yeah, that's congratulations,
yeah,
man.
thanks. Yeah, I got a little more to go, but you know, it can't be, you know, after a certain point, you know, it's just, you want to, like you want to stick around, I want to tell these stories to, 20 years from now, I want to sit here and tell these stories.
Well, I mean, you're right. We have lost a couple of people,
Yeah.
which kind of coincided with the start of this whole YouTube channel,
Hmm.
which is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring different people on from that time, you know. And what's wonderful about this group of people, I mean, you and I reconnected recently
Yeah.
at Pete's 50th, and I'm looking around the front yard and the pool and everything, and I'm like, these are people that I saw at shows, the same people,
Yeah.
1992, 93, and Pete's doing well, Tim,
Yeah. He's
that whole
doing great.
that whole crew, and there were crazy times back then,
Yeah, nah, it was,
and this is gonna sound cheesy and all that, but I don't care. It's my channel, so if anybody doesn't like it, fuck you. Uh, I couldn't be prouder to know these guys now,
Yeah.
and to see the people they ended up becoming, like, just good people, family people. Like we all kind of we got around the corner, like we
Yep.
got through that craziness. And now it's about loving the fact that we can still get together or have a Zoom conversation.
Yeah, nah, it's
Again,
yeah, yeah, we're all doing good, like I said, I met Pete, and I sat down next to him in a classroom, and I don't know, 1989, you know what I mean? I sat next to him in a classroom, and here it is, 2000, almost 2025, and we're still friends, we're still family, we all kind of drift in and out, we all have, we all go in different directions, have different, outlooks and things. But once again, like you guys, everybody kind of, it is a family, it is a kind of, hey, where hey, what's up? And he always has a great, he always had great parties, and and they've changed over the years too. They've gone from us, dropping. I don't know if your parties at his old house, you'd be standing there waiting for pork, for the pork to be done, and somebody drop them out of firecrackers on your head. Now, now, like, now it's like, there's, my parents were there. There's grandparents, parents, kids. Everybody's just there, and we are. We're a really big family, and we all come. I think it's a
yeah,
love of music. It's just being different. Everybody, trying to be philosophical about it, but like we all kind of, everybody kind of finds each other, like, and there's what do they say? There's somebody out there for everybody, there's a tribe out there for
yeah,
everyone, you can
that's
always come
it.
home, you can always kind of, I've, like, I kind of hitting that earlier in my rambling, like I can drift, in and out of, whatever, because I have a lot of different interests, like I like theater, I like movies, I like, music and things. And, it seems like the core people that I've met in my 50 years of life, for the most part, are all still, in my life, or some are, a phone call away or whatever, so it's cool. And those guys, it all kind of goes back to certain things, like you said, Dunkin' Donuts, Clubhouse, Pipeline, things like that, your shows, other shows, we all just mix, but
Yeah.
it's fun. But so I'm glad to be a part of it. That's really what it comes down to. I was always happy to, I love to, trying to say, I've always loved music since I'm a little kid. I love to be able to give people like a like a place to perform it, and that was the initial idea, even back in high school with my high school friends and stuff. It's like, man, you guys are in a band. That was your band at the talent show? Yeah, that was awesome. Well, hey, we could go in this place, you guys want to practice there and stuff, like I just liked it. You know, it wasn't even like a, oh, come be my friend. It was just like, I like what you do, you know, and I want to be around it. You know,
Yeah.
I want to be, I want to be around this. I remember going to, like I said, I remember seeing Those Unknown the one night, and maybe we could talk about them real quick before we wrap it up. But,
Sure.
but you know, I remember seeing them and go, wow, what is this? I remember going to a matinee show in the Coney Island High one day with Tim when he was going to show, and he's like, "Oh, you want to come with me and help out?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And that was, you know, it was trying to remember the whole lineup, but the main bands were Casualties,
Hmm.
Blank 77, and the Bounce of Souls. And I'd never seen I never well, I think I'd seen the Blanks a couple of times before then, because I started helping roadie certain things for them for a few years. But like I'd seen the Blanks and things, but I'd never seen the Bounce of Souls. You know, I'd never seen the Casualties. You know, I just saw the Bounce of Souls last Saturday. You know, they've become, you know, one of my favorite bands, you know, because once again, they kind of all the kind of music I like, you know, is kind of rolled into kind of what they do, you know. But I remember seeing them and going, wow, what this is, you know, it's just discovering new stuff. And it's like, it wasn't, you know, and this is, you know, this is probably stories, whoever is probably a story Legs McNeil told in the 60s or 70s. It was right there. It was like people I knew or people who I knew, they knew the people. It wasn't like, all right, look, there's, you know, there's David Gilmour on the stage, you know, in front of us, or there's, you know, Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, you know, in the Garden, or
Uh,
you know, or whoever, you know, you know, there's Kurt Cobain, but he's, you know, he's in the, you know, he's in the New York Coliseum in a big warehouse, you know, these people were right there and they were cool and they were like, hey, how are you? And it was like, it felt like, yeah, I'm a part of, you know, part of this, you know, but
those unknown were fucking
I
incredible.
know, yeah, let's talk. I was listening to them yesterday because I knew we were going to be talking. And I was trying to put a script together because I tend, once I start going, as you could tell, I don't stop. But but yeah, there was something about those guys. I think we were talking about them at Pete's party. I remember my dad pointing them out because I think the first time they played was at the Clubhouse. I think that not the first time they played, the first time I'd seen them. I think it was there.
Mhm.
And and you know, or I don't know. But anyway, they played there and they were good. And I remember my father saying, he's like, those guys are real good. You know, yeah, you know, like because a lot of it was, you know, big mohawks and screaming, and you know, they just had something to say, and it wasn't, you know, I know people are like, you know, it was political, but not in the sense of really, it was taking the side of who I felt I was, you know, it really took the side of like the working kind of, you know, in some of their songs, and other songs were, you know, just boy kind of drinking anthems. But yeah, you know, you could tell that you know, they had something to say. They always reminded me, I think I told you this, they reminded me like a mix of like Stiff Little Fingers and like CCR kind of in a weird way.
Yeah.
I could hear Bill rip through Fortunate Son or so, you know, like that would like something like that would have fit right in the middle of their set, no problem. You know, like they just, I don't know, like it sometimes like lyrics, like, you know, they speak to you at certain ages or certain times of your life, and some stuff you take with, you know, some music you take with you through your whole life, and other stuff kind of stays there, you know, when you were, you know, when you were like an angry teenager, you know, I was like, all right, this is it. But yeah, I don't relate to this no more, you know. And then it's like, you know, you're going through your party phase. Yeah, all right. But I don't like of those bands, of those Headache era bands and stuff, like I put that on like I put on Social D or Talking Heads or something, because I remember their first CD they made. Well, I had a couple of 7 inches. I have the 7 inches where they scratched out Weekend Nights or whatever, because there was a note in it. Because I guess the lyrics at the time were, they were sexually suggestive. But yeah, I listened to it yesterday, and I understood where the perspective was, where they were coming from in the sense of, they were writing it from a certain point of view. I don't necessarily believe theirs, but I guess it got misinterpreted, and and I respected them in the sense that it was like, they, they hurt people, they felt they did at the time, and they were men enough in a way to say, you know what, that's not what we meant. It's not being, it's not what we're encouraging. So we're just taking the song, kind of off the or however that, that's just how I remember interpreting. I don't remember kind of the politics or the maximum rock and roll behind it. But
Did you hear the broad the those unknown stuff that Bill did when he went to California?
no, I haven't heard much of that. You got to email me
Yeah,
some.
this goes back a long time ago. It's actually maybe in the year 2000, 2000.
Okay.
Uh, they had those unknown. He had gone out to California,
Hmm.
put together a different lineup. I think he may have had Ed from the Slags on guitar.
Okay.
I think Ed had gone out west, if I recall. This is a long time ago.
Yeah, well,
But
they played the Stanhope House.
say that again?
They played the Stanhope House not too, well, I guess it was long ago now, but Pete put on a show and they
Oh
flew
yeah.
in for that. That's the last time. I think that was the California lineup.
Because they had signed to TKO,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was the Scraps. I love that.
and they put out an EP called Malice and Misfortune.
Okay, I saw that on YouTube yesterday, but I didn't listen to it.
I interviewed Bill for the Aquarian around that time,
Okay.
and I got to tell you, as great as the early EPs are,
Yeah.
this EP, I thought it at the time, and I still think it now. It's like the next level of boy. Like Bill stepped it up a notch
Okay.
with that version of the band. So definitely, I don't, I lost touch with a lot of it at that point.
Yeah.
I got really into the industrial thing, still am.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
That's
became
yeah.
what I was doing, and like LA goth because I moved to LA and hooked up with
Exactly.
those types. Um, but that EP, and it's a 4 song EP. Amazing stuff. Like I was listening to him, like, holy shit, like this guy came from Jersey. I remember him working at like Radio Shack or something back in the
Yeah.
day. And now he's putting out stuff like this. It's like Billy Bragg level
Yeah.
stuff, you know?
I,
Um,
yeah, nah, that's always once again like that's something. I remember when they first recorded the CD, but it was recorded really bad.
yeah,
It wasn't, it was almost unlistenable. It wasn't that they were, it just, do you remember what I'm talking about? Like they
yeah,
put
yeah,
out their own CD and I couldn't wait to get it. And when I got it, it was just whatever happened to it in the mix or whatever. It just wasn't listenable, at the time. And I was like, then the TKO kind of, I guess they got they, I don't think they re-record. I think all the original Headache stuff ended up on, the album with the kid with his hand out or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
Scraps, they call, yeah. That, that's that's probably in my top 10 albums ever. I just, I just love to listen to those guys, and it's only a handful of songs and stuff, but it kind of, it's still relevant. It still speaks to you. A lot of times, anarchy, and that, like that's cool when you're young, but when you're 50-year-old man, certain things don't, you know, it's fun to listen to nostalgically, but other stuff comes back to you. Like I don't know if you saw, I don't know, I don't want to get in trouble here, but the current version of Black Flag is, I'll just put it this way, it's not for me.
Mhm.
But a few years ago, a few years ago when those guys were touring his flag, like Des Cadena
Yeah,
and Keith Morris and Dabrowski or whoever the hell was it. It was mostly a bunch of the key guys who weren't
sure.
Greg Ginn, or Henry Rollins. They were touring and they played at Asbury at the Punk Rock Bowling with Coxbar.
I was
And
there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I didn't know how I was going to respond to that because Black Flag, like I said, that was like freshman year high school bus music. You know, that was kind of freshman, sophomore kind of year. Black Flag didn't stick with me. Yeah, I really didn't listen to much Black Flag, you know, after my teens, kind of, you know. So I didn't know how I was gonna. And those guys came out and started playing, and I was like, holy shit, you know, I didn't think it was gonna affect me the way that it did, you know, and I was just like, wow, this stuff is important, you know. It's not, you know, it's not Kid Rock, you know, not Kid Rock, but you know, it's not like it's not teenage rock, you know. It's and they were so powerful and they were so passionate, and you could tell that they meant it, and it was awesome. And I saw the Dead Milkmen last Saturday, and it was a similar kind of thing where I wasn't really expecting much, you know, because, you know, I think when you're younger, you interpret like the lyrics kind of at face value, you know, a little more than, you know, you just hear, you know, you don't maybe always get the depth of it, you know, but certain stuff they were doing the other night, like even Big Lizard, I was like, you know, they kill, they don't understand, and things like that, you know, like I'm hearing these lyrics, you know, Grandpa's not a racist, he just voted for one, you know. They played the other. I'm like, yeah, there was more going on in this stuff than I remember, you know. So maybe I got to give it another chance, you know. And Bounce of Souls played an epic set. The Vandals played; they were incredible. You know, there's so much good stuff out there. You know, even trying to think of some other shows for before we pack it in, but um last maybe it was I can't remember exactly when it was, but I saw last year it was about I saw Life of Agony and Sick
Mm,
of It All. They were touring together, and
I
I
saw
went.
that tour.
Yeah, I went to that at Starland Ballroom, and those bands were amazing. And that's
Life of
some,
Agony, for me, Life of Agony, the way they are right now,
yeah,
they are Jane's Addiction in 1991 level good.
yeah. No, it was, and I was never that big. I knew the first couple albums or whatever, but you know, both of those bands like were they were firing on, like they didn't seem like old, like bands that had been around for 30 years. Like
Yeah.
they were loud, and they were hungry, and they played fast and hard. And last summer I went to the Metallica shows, and you know, the first night was, I forget, it was, they had somebody out in the parking lot, Prong, or
Prom
yeah,
was probably,
I've
yeah, Prom.
heard you talking about Prong, yeah. Yeah, they were out in the, you know, they were out in the lot. They sounded pretty good. Wolfgang Van Halen and the Reformed Pantera, which that was another kind of flag moment where I was never that big of a fan of Pantera. I wouldn't say I liked their music, but the culture around them wasn't. That was just never who I was. You know what I mean? That whole, you know, rebel flags and Jägermeister and all that kind of, you know, that I was never that kind of person, but I could always appreciate, you know, anything that's, you know, like in The Sopranos when Hesh, you know, tells him, he goes, I don't, a hit is a hit, you know, like it doesn't matter whether it's, you know, whether it's Jimi Hendrix or, the Bouncing Souls, you know, a good song is a good song. So I could always appreciate good stuff. And Pantera was, they were, you know, the reformed Pantera. It was great. I was like, this is still good. It's important. You know, it sounds great. Charlie Benante is amazing. You know, Zach is Zach, but he was, you know, he was doing it. You know, but the next night, the opening bands, I was like, it was Five Finger Death Punch, which, you know, I don't know. I don't get. And I forget the other band. And Overkill played in the parking lot. I was like, man, Overkill should have been playing before Metallica. And then I was kind of like, well, then I thought of that Sick of It All Life of Agony show. I was like, there's two bands that could have rocked that could have rocked that stadium, you know, opening, you know, it's like they're playing it, you know, they're playing Starland Ballroom, but for some reason, you know, Five Finger are playing, you know, arenas. But things change, you know. People are into different kind of stuff, you know. It's like, think of how bad we thought Nickelback was back in the day. Now you kind of hear Nickelback and you're like, yeah, compared to this other stuff. Compared to some of
I
this other, these
I
guys are these guys sound like Nirvana now.
yeah, I mean I still can't get into them, not because I think they
No,
suck.
no, I'm just saying,
It's just like I'm not that radio. I mean, I listen to Taylor Swift, so I have
yeah,
like all over the place. But that kind of style of hard rock and that whole
yeah,
genre,
nah, that's yeah,
Stained and
that's
all that, it never impacted me.
no, it
Good for anybody who loves it. Like if you're a huge fan, like anybody's a huge fan of that stuff who gets something out of it, cool. I just can't. It just doesn't do anything for me.
yeah, nah, they were, they always got a lot of heat. And I give it, I stopped giving it to them the last few years though, because I listen to WDHA a lot, trying to win concert tickets. And plus I just like to support it's local radio, and
Yeah,
that
yeah.
doesn't that's something that's, rare, nowadays, so it's, I try to, even if I'm not listening to it, I put it on in my little radio in the truck and I'll just turn the volume down, so I like to be supportive. I like to listen. I love to try to win stuff, I'm always calling in, but like they, some of the bands like, that have come along since, or, they were just too old, but I don't respond to a lot of new music. But one of the things I tend to do now is I kind of discover older stuff that I
Mm.
wasn't that into, back when I was younger, like I went through a few years ago, I went through like a real hair metal kind of, we'll just call it hair metal. I went through a big phase of just rediscovering all of that and being like, yeah, this isn't as silly as I thought it was. I went through a big hardcore renaissance because I didn't really get hardcore when it was happening. It was similar to the to Pantera type to me. It was like it sounds good. I like this, but the culture around it and 400 guys with no shirts on, jumping all over each other and everything. It wasn't anything that, I felt I needed to be a part of, but a few years ago I started just, listening to a little more Agnostic Front, Madball, Cro-Mag, things like that. And I love a lot of that stuff. I really didn't give too much of a chance to. Like I kind of go back to, which is
Yeah.
good too, because if you never heard it, it's new to you.
Oh yeah.
It's new to me. Even though it's so, but so I'm still trying to go out, still try to do shows. I don't get as much stuff as I like, but I still hang out with whoever I can. Last summer was probably the last kind of punk, kind of, when I went up to Boston, that was great. And, we had a good time there. And I wanted to go to the Broken Hero show yesterday, but my uncle flew in from Colorado. So we had a little family get together yesterday. So I sat out their show, but there's some stuff, there's always stuff going. It's good to see that everybody's playing again and stuff. And it does kind of like the spark a little bit where it's like, could we, could we put together a set? Could we go play? Would we have something to say, and who knows, maybe we'll get something out there, but it's good. And that since you're doing this, it's really cool. Cause I listen to a lot of, I watch a lot of Drew Stone's New York hardcore.
Sure.
Yeah. I love those. And then I told you not too long ago, I was telling you at the party, I saw your interview with Tim pop up on YouTube, and I was like, what's this? And I was like, I remember telling you, I'm like, who the hell want to listen to this? And then, and then I told you, I put it on and I listened to the whole thing. Then I went to another one. I'm like, obviously me, and the range of people that you're talking to are great. I like, are you going to do anything like Misfit kind of related or?
Well, Halloween's coming up.
Yeah, all right. You don't have to
It,
tell me who, what,
it would
where.
seem that that would be the time.
Yeah, yeah. Nah, that'd be cool. But yeah, I wish that's another thing I could probably talk another half hour about.
Yeah.
It's a Misfits, but we could do that. We could do that another day if you want. It's getting late, but
Well, yeah, man. I mean, I remember at the
hopefully I
time
didn't,
we were talking
hopefully you
about
could.
doing this, and you were like, I don't know what I can talk about. Here we are 2 hours
Yeah,
in.
no, I won't shut up. And I
That's how
can,
it happens, man. But I love it.
yeah,
I love doing these things.
yeah, I love it too. Hopefully I'm not, rambling. You could cut this down as much as you want, I mean,
Oh, man.
you know.
It's been great. I'm glad we did this.
Yeah, me too. I'm having fun, and it's, once again, Clubhouse, it was great, it was all the bands, all the fun stuff, a lot of it, I still, I've had an interest in kind of, I've been involved in a lot of interest in fun stuff, you don't really think about it until the last, I was just thinking today when I was working, I'm like, yeah, I used to go and I was around all these bands. I remember the Pissed you were talking about. I remember staying at their house one time with the Blanks, and we were snowed in, and I was sleeping on a floor, freezing, and that's when I knew I was like, yeah, this kind of travel, and this ain't for me, this, But we did a whole run up, up that way, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and came down to they opened for Rancid, one night in the Roseland, and I was on their crew. I ended up singing some of Chinese rock on Roseland stage. Mike was like, here, we were singing Chinese rock in front of 5,000 people or whatever. We were downstairs, me and TC. We got down there early. We drank like all our stuff in the green room, like quick. Then there was TC's like we're at Ranson's dressing rooms, like across from the Blanks one. And TC's like, man, they don't drink anyway, man. Let's go. So we were there. We're like sneaking, we're like sneaking the beers and stuff, so many, there's just so many good times, and so many great people, and like I said, I'm happy, happy to do this. I'm happy to know you and to have played and to, you know, been a part of all this with everybody,
Yeah.
all the guys you've had on, Fincy, Tim, Pete, even the guys I don't know, well, I found their stories interesting, like Jack Steeples. I don't really know Jack, but he lived in Opakong, he used to have a boat dock down at my dad's beach, like weird, weird things kind of, we all kind of intersect and, big weirdo family. So it's fun and we'll see what's next. This got me kind of, listening to some old tapes and thinking about some old stuff. Got me feeling like, yeah, maybe we could get, maybe we get on stage one more time if I could get those guys to, want to get them in
Do it.
the,
Do it.
yeah, get them in a room. I think, it always went over well, it always did it, for the few, we always kind of had, there was something there. It just never, you know, gelled, it just never kind of got to the next kind of thing, it started as one thing and ended as something else, but, it was always fun, it always had a lot of heart in it. And, we, we weren't rock stars, but we acted like them, and that was fun too.
Yeah.
But
Good
anyway,
times.
I don't want to keep you no more because I could keep going.
Well, again, man, thanks for coming on. And
Yeah, you get bored, let me know. We can do something else. We could talk,
yeah, yeah.
favorite bands, favorite,
When the Squad Car Vandals do the reunion show, come back on and we'll talk
All
about
right, let's do that. Let me push for that. Now I'm gonna get that tape edited somewhere. See if we can get some kind of format. See if anybody responds to it.
it. Yeah.
And maybe we'll play somewhere. Play the Franklin Legion Hall reunion,
Jeez.
reunion show.
Yeah. I'll come down to Jersey for something like that,
Yeah,
You know,
that's
why?
the last thing I remember. Even watching Mick from Flatus or whatever.
Mhm.
He was the sound guy the day we played there, and
Yep.
the kids started throwing snowballs at us, and he was getting he was like came over. He's all mad. He's like, or no, he sent you on like, Tom, you gotta stop telling him to throw snowballs and shit because there was all the snow was going in his. Yeah, we were bad with monitors. Yeah, it was snowballs, pig brains. People
Uh,
like to throw stuff at us, So, chairs, snow, dirt, anything. Somebody was always throwing something. I'll tell this, ago. We played at a party on the lake, and I don't know, something about Opakong and guys have a pig roast. But anyway, we're playing a set, right? And I'm like, I want the pig head. And sure enough, some guy comes up with the pig head and hands it to me. And I'm standing there with it, singing to it or whatever I'm doing. And the friggin' whatever the hell, brain or something fell out, went right into the friggin' monitor, right? So cleaned it up. I threw the head in the lake and shit. I was like, ugh. So anyway, the guy, we cleaned it up. The guy, he was mad. So we're playing with these other guys at the Boulevard Pub, like not too long after, and they rented that guy's equipment. And they're like, they all of a sudden they're complaining about a monitor that it smells or some shit like that, or there was something in it, and it was the pig brain monitor. I guess like it don't work and it stinks. They're like, what the hell's all that in there? And I was like, oh, I was just like, I don't know. Maybe we'll just play with one then. I didn't want to like admit to it. We were like, yeah, then I go tell the other guys. I'm like, yeah, that's the monitor with that we dropped the pig brains in and shit. So there's more of those. So whatever. Yeah, once if I could put it back together, we'll talk some more. But this is great, Joel. Thanks for asking me. Hope it was all right.
yeah, man, this has been great. Thanks again for coming on, and we will do this again.
Yeah, no problem, man. Sounds good.
Cool.
All right,
Take care,
brother. Take
buddy.
care of yourself. Yeah, I'll talk to you later.